Hello, I am Francis Lombard. Welcome back to Portrait of an Editor. Here's part two of my conversation with Stephanie Phillips and Will Dennis about shepherding a career in comics. Before that, some housekeeping. The past 50 or so episodes are now on YouTube for free. When you get there, please like and subscribe. As a matter of fact, please like and subscribe to whatever podcasting app you use to listen to Portrait of an Editor. It helps a lot in the motivation department and also the numbers. Thank you. A reminder, there is a Portrait of an Editor Patreon page where you can find all the older interviews that I've done since 2017. So check it out for $1 a month. Because of timing, my next release will be about the relaunch of Heavy Metal. You should be able to find the new issue of Heavy Metal right now. It's even on newsstands throughout the world. So if you're a heavy metal fan, then you should rush out and get it right now. I've had the opportunity to take a look at it, and it's a great looking magazine. It's a really great relaunch, so it's worth checking out. Finally, a sad note. I was really stung by the passing of Butch Guice. When I first started out as an editor at Humanoids, I worked a lot with Butch. Looking back, I would consider him not only a friend, but also a mentor. R.I.P. Butch, and my condolences to his friends and family. Now here's part two of my conversation with Stephanie Phillips and Will Dennis. Enjoy. Stephanie, to review, you started out your career by putting your own money into something.
I didn't have a lot to put into it, but I paid for about 8 pages of a script so that I had something that I could shop around to editors.
So you had a day job, which you had worked hard to get. You put your own money into it. That maybe the attitude that has that sort of carried you throughout this career, that you basically entered the comic book industry on your own terms with your own money. And has that sort of, have you taken that up to now? I mean, or is that how you look at things where, say, it's not like, oh, am I going to blow everything up by saying no to this? Or worked for you throughout the years as you've moved through and quit the job that allowed you to get into comics, that paid the rent for a while?
I'm not afraid to ask for what I want. And
Yeah.
think I don't know how much of that is a very good thing. It's definitely a learned skill, but I mean, people at Marvel will tell you that too. Like I joke about it with C.B. Cebulski, their editor-in-chief, and I've been told by other people too, like you're more direct than other creators. And it's like, well, yes, if I'm going to take the job. And again, I think that's where we get into this nostalgia thing where like people just accept the deal or accept what's on the table. And I don't. I'm very, again, maybe I'm more vocal than other people. And, I've had people at Chip Mosher, who's now kind of running Distillery Comics. That's something that he told me early on. Actually, he found to be a really good trait in me, which was like when we were talking about me doing some books at Amazon and Comixology, I came back with, even before my agent and attorney got involved, I came back with like, here's what I'm going to do. And like, here's the plan. And he was like, it was very direct. It was, I am my own advocate. Yes, I have other people in my corner that like my agent, but first and foremost, I am my own advocate. And I have learned that over time, I have to be that. Nobody else will be that for you. So I am like, I am not afraid to ask for what I want, and I am not afraid to walk away from something if we're not able to play ball together. That's just the position that I feel like is, I don't know. It's made me successful, because if these people aren't willing to come play ball with me, somebody else will.
You made a bet on yourself, right? By like spending that money to make those pages, to get that stuff, and sort of feel like, because I think you've even said before in interviews or maybe your reels or something about how even when you got that book to another publisher and did it, like you never made any money on that. Like everybody else, even when they published it, you never actually got paid, like, even once it was published. But like the return on investment for that was huge. Like when you think of like I don't know how many years ago was that, 6, 7 years ago, maybe more. I don't know. But I mean, the ROI on that has been massive for like the thousands of X amount of dollars you probably spent to pay an artist to do it.
I mean, I was a grad student at the time, and I was, along with teaching, I was teaching like 4 undergrad classes as a TA, and then like super early in the morning, I would go teach. I had a bunch of private clients at the Muay Thai gym, so I was giving private lessons, and I would run a couple group classes and some like fitness classes. So all the money I made from the Muay Thai gym, I invested into the comic, and it was like I was taking on more clients to pay for it, and I had a set goal. I was like, I know that I want these 8 pages, and I know I want them from this artist. I know his page rate, so I'm going to work until I get his page rate covered. And I knew I couldn't sustain that, so it had to go to a publisher that would pay his page rate. So the deal I made, because we had more than one offer, and one publisher was not going to give any upfront money, and I was looking at that and I was like, I can't sustain that. Like, just I cannot pay this out of pocket. I've got a colorist, I've got the letterer, I've got the artist. I could pay for those 8 pages, and I worked for a long time to pay for those pages, and then I was like, I'm tapped. Like, that was all the money I had invested. So when Black Mask made the deal, that was essentially like, here's the upfront money, and once we distribute it, it was like, okay, I can't take any of the upfront money, or else the artist page rate goes down, that kind of thing. So I intentionally kept the artist page rate exactly what he wanted it to be. Same with the colorist and the letterer, and that meant I was taking 0. But I wasn't thinking in my head like this would launch a career, because in my mind I had a career. I was in grad school to become a professor. So I was like, that's my track. And I just wanted to do this thing because I had a story. I was really excited about it. I liked comic books. I liked the project. And then it was, out in the world, and I ended up with like a meeting with Aftershock. They asked if I could meet with them at a convention, and I was like, oh, all right, I'll get myself to this convention and meet with them, because I had no idea, and I had no idea what would come of that either. Again, I'm writing at this point, I'm writing a dissertation to get my PhD, and I had already accepted a job as a professor at the University of Buffalo. So again, I've got my track. And I had no idea what was really happening on the other side.
After Aftershock, it's Mike Marks, and then the jobs that came there. So you have a relationship with an editor, but when did you start approaching agents? Because before we started recording, we were talking about read the contract, and making sure you have it pass an attorney. Do you feel to keep your career going as you started seeing this begin to bubble up, that I need somebody else on my team too? Or was it strictly organic too? Did somebody suggest that you need to have an attorney look at it? I mean, a lot of creators don't even think that think they can read a contract and that's good enough. And sometimes you can't even afford the attorney fee, but where did they?
My talent attorney, who does all my media deals, doesn't get paid. And my agent works this way too. They don't get paid until you get paid. So my agent isn't making money until he sells the property, and then he's taking a cut of the sale. And my media attorney works the same way.
Is it 15%, or 10% for the agent, 15, or?
You can ask my attorney if he read the agreement I signed with him.
Okay.
I know what the percentage is, but it's been a while. But I mean, it's been years that I've worked with these guys, and it's been a really good relationship. And the agent contacted me. The agent was, I think, slightly newer to bringing in comic book talent. So he had like a stable of a lot of TV writers and movie writers, and the comic side was newer. And he approached me. I sent some of the stuff I was working on, and honestly, we've never looked back. I'm not interested in any other agent. He has been absolutely just fantastic for me. The things like a lot of the stuff I can't even say what it is that he's done for me, but he's gotten deals like I've never ever heard of before. And I mean, the question is just genuine. Like, I don't even know how he got this, and it's been really incredible. And I'm grateful that he found me. Again, I'm not even entirely. I think somebody gave him my name, and then he reached out. So, and I didn't know anything about agents at the time, and it's been good. As far as the attorneys go, through him, I have the media attorney, and then outside of that, I have a contract attorney as well. So before I sign any contract, I know there's the question of like paying an attorney, but paying an attorney to look over your contracts, and whether it's comics or, again, I have the media attorney who negotiates those deals. You're losing money if you're not. So the argument, I feel like, kind of negates itself a little bit. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to spend the money on the attorney. It's like, okay, well, you're probably going to lose money on the deal you sign. So the money is coming out of your pocket somehow. I would rather bet on us up front and get the best deal we can. So my name doesn't go on anything an attorney hasn't read.
Will, do you suggest for anybody's career to have an attorney in their pocket?
Yeah, you got to. I mean, the thing is, and if it's a money thing, I mean, I understand that sometimes that's difficult, but it's like, one thing, most of these contracts tend to be the same. Most of these companies are really using like the same blueprint. So it's like if you deal with one and you have your attorney really like walk you through what the points are, because honestly, most of these contracts, like there's very few places where you can negotiate, right? Like there's not a lot of wiggle room. There's a few points that generally can be negotiated, but for the most part, the language is pretty much like boilerplate language. Boom deal, because Paul Levitz was like, went to Boom and was there. Like it's essentially the same deal. Like I could probably write it like with my eyes closed because I know that it's based off of like the Vertigo deal. You know what I mean? And so there's finer points that you can change and things about it, but it's probably worthwhile to find an attorney that can at least walk you through the first one, even if you feel like you can't afford to do it every time out. But yeah, Stephanie said, it's like, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. Cause it's like, they have a lot of these companies have a whole, office of attorneys that have spent years like developing these contracts. And so you're up against like a lot of fairly formidable opponents. I mean, particularly when you talk about places like Marvel being owned by Disney, it's like with the running gag is that Disney is a law firm with a theme park attached to it, So, it's like these guys don't mess around,
No, they don't.
Yeah.
So
your career as organic, it was organic and it was decisions and it was a lot of hard work and your own money into it. When did you decide, Stephanie, to like quit your day job?
I think it was like right around COVID shutdown time. I mean, the first thing was all the courses I was teaching at University of Buffalo obviously transitioned to online format. And as a TA, I was already, they call it a TA so they can pay you less, but you're not a TA. I've never, ever been in a classroom with another professor. I've always had my own class since I was 21 and sitting in the front row as a kid I went to high school with, who's like, hey, what are you doing here? And it's like, oh, I'm teaching your class. Like, what is this? Like,
Right.
like somebody's paying for that education and I'm not sure, like, what am I doing here? It's a good question. It was 9 years of teaching in a college classroom and just becoming, I think, increasingly more disillusioned with higher academics, like the way that the academy works. That's its own whole conversation. But similar to comics, like there are a lot of problems, especially when you're talking about how do we teach somebody writing and whether or not that's even possible. That's its whole thing. But I was already having those conversations. I was starting to get more and more work in comics. And then I got asked to write the ongoing Harley Quinn series. And on top of my own creator-owned work, the ongoing Harley Quinn, I was having conversations about a Wonder Woman book that became the Wonder Woman Evolution series I did. It was a lot. I was feeling really stretched. Like I'm grading hundreds and hundreds of student essays that are 10 plus pages long. I'm helping students write grants, and it's like that's a ton of work. And then late at night, I have to sit down and somehow find the ability to write as Harley Quinn, and it's like that's I don't want to split. It's like if I'm going to take the job writing Harley Quinn, I'm going to go all in on this. This is no longer. This is not a hobby. This is not a thing that I was like, oh, I'm having fun doing this. That's a job, and the person who's writing that book, this should be their job. I felt like I was already headed towards that before I got the offer for Harley, and then when I got the offer for Harley, I feel like it really solidified it for me. It was like I can take that jump now and feel
Right.
okay.
But I also feel like probably like even with myself, like I had a really lucrative career in like film stuff in New York, and when I took the job at DC, I think I've said that I took like an 80% pay cut or something. Like I literally went from like, I don't know, 100 plus thousand to like, I think my starting salary was like 27.5 or something when I started. And I was like in my early 30s. So I was like way older than I should have been to be like an assistant editor. But that to me was like, I walked in that place with just like, I need to hold on to this job like grim death. But then I also was sort of like, if I'm not advancing in X amount of years and getting closer to this money that I walked away from, well, then I have to leave. Like, you're not going to, I mean, I said it to Karen, like the first day I walked in, Karen Berger, the first day I walked in there, I was like, look, if this isn't a pathway to other things, like because there were assistant editors that had been there for 10 years or more and never moved up, but they were just so happy to, be trafficking Superman pages that they never asked for it. They never pushed for it. They never, so to me, it was like to have this career that I had walked away from, which I wasn't happy in. I didn't like it, and I knew it wasn't really sustainable, but it paid a shit ton of money. I mean, we're talking like 90s, so you can do the math on what I was making in 2025 dollars. That was a huge motivator, but it also was like, well, I know that I can do other things too, and I think it's probably for you, it's like the same kind of thing. It's like you said, it's like this isn't a hobby. This is like a career. This is a job. Like I need to take this seriously. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the way you run all your stuff, Stephanie. It's just that there's very disciplined, very planned, and not in a way that I think you were saying about like meeting these people. Like I've known so many of these people at conventions and things where they're just constantly pitching, they're constantly on the make, you don't operate like that, but I do feel like an adult about it, like you're professional about it, that it's like, what is this getting me to take this versus what is this losing me to say no to this kind of stuff, which I don't know, maybe a lot of people just don't think like that. I mean, I don't, I can't really, I mean, I always felt like it's even for the show, it's kind of funny. Like I don't think I'm a typical editor. So it's like, it's often like even the stuff I say, I always feel like, I don't know if that's going to be most people's experience in terms of, because I don't know that other editors that I've interacted with or know think about these things as much as I think about these things in terms of where I'm headed, where you're headed, where we're headed together, or, that sort of, like, I feel like people often are just kind of plugging holes in the dam and trying to get to the next day.
Is it because I guess desperation has been something we've talked about at, how you interact with people and that sense of desperation coming across from people? Do you sort of take stop and think about your career at times? Seeing it has been a bit, Stephanie, a bit organic, but if you put some thought in what is the next step and where am I, of just, I guess, a self-awareness about who you are and where you want to be, and just, how am I going to, for lack of a better term, take advantage of this situation you found yourself in? I guess to manage your career, do you have to have this moment of self-awareness and really stop and think about where is this going to take me if I make this decision?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think most decisions I make in any way, shape, or form are going through my agent as well. Like we're
Mhm.
talking about that pretty constantly. We have we have calls that are just about like taking stock and where are we, what else is there that we should be going after, what is our kind of to-do list in the kind of grand scheme of things. I do think there is a lot of myopic thinking in terms of not thinking beyond the present day, which is like, all right, I have this one script to write, I got to think about that and get through that. And it is difficult to also be thinking about long-term future things, careers. But when you're not working for someone like New York State, which I was, and had amazing health insurance, a guaranteed salary that would go up at certain points, and like a career trajectory that was lined out for me by the university of like, you publish X amount and you get this kind of pay raise, and whatever it is, that doesn't exist in the comic world. So you have to kind of make it for yourself when you're working in a creative field. And I feel like it's beneficial to make that kind of career plan for myself, to have that thought through, know what goals are. And those goals are constantly shifting. I've hit a lot of the goals that I had for myself 5 years ago. But I try to run everything. It is a business. I'm incorporated. I have a business. I have an assistant. I have, I consider Will not just my editor, but my partner in that business. So what we're making together, Will owns IP with me. So a lot of the stories I make, I feel like it's ours as a team. I own IP with Will and the artists. So I'm building teams. And I'm talking outside of Marvel because like I enjoy doing that, but that's not my business. My business is all of the things I've created for myself. Watching those things currently get made into TV shows at more than one location, writing those shows, being a producer on those shows, which is built into my contracts. The royalties we've talked about, and at some point when I got my first royalty for a book like Grimm, and the royalty was more than my annual salary was as a professor, which required multiple degrees, I was just like, okay, I took a bet, and the bet I took was, and I think that was like the first moment I felt like I made a bet that is paying off, a bet that is that is working out in ways I didn't even know it could. And I'm very fortunate. But again, taking that bet was definitely scary.
You're at Marvel, and that's a page rate. And I've heard people online talk about Boom's page rates. But at the end of the day, if you put the nostalgia aside, of like, I want to write Batman and that's all I want to do in comics, there's an opportunity here if you invest in yourself to create a career that, as Will's been, numerous times saying, do original stuff, do stuff that pays off down the road. There's an opportunity there if you not think about, as we were saying, sort of what's right in front of you, but sort of stop and think about what could be down there. The information's out there. That it sounds like what you've managed to accomplish with the creator owned and relationships is to establish something that pays really well at the end of the day after the investment. You might have to do a lot of hard work up front, and Will, you can tell me too that it's worth it if you don't get trapped in nostalgia, if you are willing to invest in yourself. And I'm just trying to sort of go through what we're talking about here for people.
This is what I've said often recently, more recent years, when people talk to me about how do you break into comics, and I'm like, you can be into comics this afternoon if you want to be. Like even when I first started, and it was like there were these I was like a top gatekeeper of the industry, and it was just like if I tapped you on the shoulder and gave you one of these coveted spots, like you were like off to the races if you didn't screw it up. But that's not the world we live in anymore. So there isn't a lot of excuses not to be doing stuff if you really feel like this is what you want to try to do. I mean, but it it does always come back down to the work. I mean, Stephanie just laid it out for you. It's like I'm teaching 5 classes, I'm working on my dissertation, I'm writing grants, and you could have gone home every night and binge watched The Bachelor, but you didn't. You like had the discipline and the intestinal fortitude to sit there and be like, this is what I want to try to do. And maybe that would have been the only thing you did, but at least you could have said, well, I did it. I mean, this is the problem. I feel like so many creatives fall into this trap of like, they like all the trappings of being a writer or being an artist, but they don't actually want to like do the hard work of being a writer. There's a lot of writers sitting in bars right now saying that they're writers when they should be home staring at the blank page of actually writing,
words to paper.
But right, it's just, like it's like you can read all the Bukowski books you want, but it's like at some point, even as fucked up as Charles Bukowski was, or any of those guys, like he pulled out a notepad and wrote in it. He sat in front of a typewriter and typed it. I mean, William Burroughs might have spent all his time like taking drugs and having sex, but he also spent a certain amount of hours in a day actually writing it down. But
now I have to schedule that like that.
You have to schedule that.
You have to schedule the drugs and the sex stuff part, All right. The rock and roll part is in there somewhere too. But yeah, if you had less tattoos, I think you'd probably have more time for writing. I get a lot of those. Like, well, I need to get the script to you Friday, but I do have a 3-hour appointment that I have to go to first. They're like, well,
tattoo.
What are we doing?
Hey.
We're spending all our money on tattoos? Come on. This is my kid. This is my future. You're throwing down the drain. But no, I don't know. I mean, it's like, it all comes back to the same old stuff. I mean, there's just no shortcut. I mean, it's like, it's a really hard job. It's a really difficult profession to take. For better or worse, there's no shortcuts. At a certain point, it comes down to you and like a blank piece of paper, or you and the pencil and an artboard or whatever it is. There's no way to cut out those time. There just isn't, sadly.
Cut out the business. Like some of that stuff is boring. Like I would rather be writing, but the amount of time I've spent with an accountant this week going over all the expenses from 24 artists I've paid, my own money I've made, like that stuff is I'm essentially running a business. That's what I'm doing. And I didn't quite know that writing comic books would mean I'm running my own business.
Right,
and if I just wrote for Marvel, I probably wouldn't be. But I have so many other projects. I mean, the stuff between my agent, my attorneys, my accountant, like my assistant, all of this stuff, I'm setting up basically a functioning business. It's a lot.
No, it's more than a business. It's like an empire, I mean, it's like, well, I mean, it should be in a way, because it's like you have this channel of the TV, you have this channel of, like, if there's a video game opportunity, or you've got the comics, you've got, maybe you want to write a novel at some point. Like, I mean, there's lots of things but I think it's like, as a model, like you're a great model to people who are aspiring, or even people who are doing it. Because as I said, I mean, you and I could both, if we wanted to name names of people that were disappointed in the way that they've managed their careers, given what I feel like is their talent, I don't know, but it requires discipline. It requires a plan. It requires like getting help from other people and like trusting them to help you. Yeah. And sometimes you get burned. I mean, you've been burned. I've been burned, like, I mean, there's a lot of times where you're like, oh, I've been burned multiple times by the same people. Like, I sometimes go back to the same people and I'm like, oh, why did I not learn my lesson there? Like, it wasn't going to be different. But
how do you deal with the setbacks? Because I got burned. I think one project, I wouldn't even be talking to you guys if it went forward. My life path would have gone a lot different. It would have been the break probably. And it just blew up. And then it was back to the grind. And it took a little while to recover from that. And then I happened again with another possibility of like, it just blew up again. It was a business. How do you handle things going south to keep going, keep your career going, especially with all the work you've done to get to the point that to that point where you got burnt? How is it you shake it off and then keep moving forward? Like, Stephanie, if you want to take this one first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to like build that in. Like, you have to know that you're going to get told no for things, or things aren't going to move forward, and have that perspective. I've talked with a lot of incoming writers recently who have one thing. Like, this is the book I want to make, and this is the book I'm pitching. And I've said, okay, well, if somebody tells you no, what are your other pitches? And it's a blank stare. And I'm like, you have one, that's not how this works.
Right.
That's like, you're probably going to get told no. You have no track record of a project. And unless this project is like the home run. It's going to be all kinds of other movie, TV show, all like it is the best idea anybody's ever heard. Like you're probably going to get told no. Like that's the reality of the business. You get more no's than yeses, and especially early on. And if you are not prepared or understand that that is the function of being a creative, like if you've got one pitch and you're told no, and 2 years later you still have that one pitch and you're like, one day, it's like, no, you didn't adapt, you didn't find the next thing. Like Comixology, I had a deal for multiple books there, and the first thing that I gave Chip Mosier, it was something that they were already doing something similar. So he was like, I can't do another. It was like, let's say it was a murder mystery, and he's like, I just approved a murder mystery. They'd be coming out simultaneously. Like, I don't want to do that. Okay, that's a no, and that's a pass. I went back to Chip and I said, okay, well, how about one of these two things? And he called me immediately and he was like, most people just go away. And he wasn't saying this like, oh, this was annoying. He was like, it's actually really exciting that somebody said, well, I have this opportunity and I have this other book I'm developing. Would you be interested in this one? And they did it. It was We Only Kill Each Other with artist Peter Krause. That got accepted that day. And it was because I was ready to say, okay, I accept the no. And I'm not sitting here crying over the book you said no to. By, again, you never know why somebody's saying no. In that case, I did. I knew there was another thing approved that was similar. And so I had something wildly different. I was ready to give him immediately. And that day I had a yes for a book. And I think it's, it's not like I turned around and said, here's 50 more things. Like, it's, you got to have a balance. There's I think if it was
that's a good point. Cause I've had the opposite happen too, where it's like, yeah, we were just going through a number of like distillery pitches and stuff and trying to weed things out and trying to work with the people there about like just the process and how to refine the process and stuff. But it's some of these people like with 6 or 8 pitches, like that. I'm like, why am I reading the 6 or 8 pitches from the same person? I mean, it's great that they have all these ideas, but like, I didn't like the first 3. I don't think I'm going to necessarily like the next 5. So it's like, but that, some of that's a failure of the people taking that on board, because it's like, you need to quickly look at those and be like, okay, this one I really like. Maybe I can see more in that or something. Or realize like, if I let you take 8 shots at this and they're all bricks, like, maybe it's just not going to happen. Or maybe, let's revisit this in a year or something like that, So it is, like I said, it's a fine line between like, I have the one thing and that's it, or I have 15 things. Cause then it feels like, which ones do you care about? Which ones are really, I was always a little leery of people that would be, yeah, like they'd have the folder of the 10 things that they were, oh, are you looking for this? Well, I have it, or here it is. It always felt a little like kind of used car sale. Like, what's it going to take for me to put you into a horror comedy series today? Like kind of stuff. So it's that kind of thing. Like, it's a little, there is a happy medium between the two.
I don't know. As a creator, I think, I mean, I had 20 things that I could pull out of my pocket,
Sure.
but I was passionate about all of them. I wanted all of them to have a home. I mean, I didn't put the time and effort into bringing these. Now I know, to be honest, that some of them were weaker than than others.
Well,
but,
that's the thing. I think it's like, that's where you really have to look at yourself hard in the mirror and be like, look, yeah, sure, I spent the time to develop 20 of these, but you and I both know that 3 of them were like probably really good. And those are the ones that you really wanted to happen. I mean, that sounds like I'm being a dick, but like, it's like when I see writers that are writing 6 or 7 books a month, I'm sort of like, come on, like at a certain point, like, what are we doing here? Like, you can't possibly be giving your all to all of those. And you don't always have to give your 100% to everything, but there is like diminishing returns after a while. So, I mean, some of that is like, you have to sort of really be hard on yourself and look at like which of these you're going to really make it, and which of these, and not to say you throw those all away, you keep those in a drawer, because at some point, like, maybe the time is right later down the road for that, but yeah, I don't know. I was always very leery of the person who had the one idea and they came back to you with it multiple times, or the person who had 15 things because I'm like, well, which one do you like the best?
Well, I
But
mean, I think with pitching, it was just one idea at a time.
sure.
Um, I don't know. I think there were times where people wanted to hear more than one, but usually it was
Yeah,
I'd go
right.
into a pitch meeting, just there's one thing, and
But they didn't want to hear 15,
they didn't want to hear
it's like
15.
they wanted to hear somewhere in between,
But I mean, for me, it was like they were aware if there was maybe more than one. There was a conversation up front before that if there was going to be more than one pitch discussed. But I've had pitches where the executive said, "I don't like the artwork." I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay, I guess we're done here." I'm like,
Sure.
okay, I'll get in my car and drive back to my apartment. So,
Oh, no. And then I
yeah,
turned
it
my
was like,
and then I turned myself into a serial killer.
I'm like, no,
And now
I
I have an even better idea.
I had a partner, an artist that we had teamed up together, and we were pitching all over in animation. And at one meeting, and he's like, "I just don't like the artwork," and I'm like, okay, I've never heard that one in these pitch meetings after like 2 years of working with this guy and having the art be like a great icebreaker." And I'm like, okay, I guess we're done. So like, I'll
Yeah.
go back to the
I
drawing board
mean,
and say,
that's a
"We're not gonna-"
yeah, that's a horror story too. It's hard because there was millions of not millions, there was many people at DC and Vertigo in the years that would work with editors, get an idea, write it, write a Bible, write a treatment, write a script, write all this crap, and then take it to their editor, their editor in chief or what have you, and the person would be like, I don't know, I don't really like it, and then it was like a year's worth of everyone's time. So my philosophy was always like, I need to get this approved at the earliest possible stage for the least amount of stuff, right? So that's why
Yeah.
I developed this like one page pitch thing because I was always like, I can put this in front of Karen Berger, who is getting pitches from four other editors and herself, and she's got kids and she's commuting and every other thing in the world that's distracting you. And be like, nobody doesn't have time to read one page, right? I mean, they just don't. But like people would come in and give you like a script that was 120 pages and expect you to read it. And I'd be like, this is dead in the water. I can guarantee you. Like you'll never get a response on this. It is tricky to kind of find, where that balance is between, how much spec stuff are you doing and that sort of thing. But yeah, you always got to have multiple ideas. I don't really. Otherwise, then just take out a loan, pay somebody to make the comic, publish it, and be done with it.
Before we sign off, I was wondering because Stephanie, if there's anything with this discussion, like the last 90 minutes, what advice can you give to somebody who's, I mean, I guess starting out, we've already talked about, you got to invest in yourself. But when it comes to, I guess, what was the most critical part looking back in your career? Was it that day when you realized I need to make this a full time job with the Harley Quinn book? Or was there something else going on where something flipped and you're like, if I continue with this approach, I can navigate a career for myself in comics that will replace all the time and energy I put into building a career as, as a professor. Was
Yeah,
there
I mean,
something?
doing the work. Once I realized how much of it was doing the work, and it sounds so small, but then over the years I've learned talking with other editors like Will and even Marvel editors, there's this huge problem of people that just stop doing the work, like they feel like they can't, and then they disappear, like literally ghost an editor in the middle of a project, whether it's an artist or a writer, and they just disappear. And a lot of it is like this, they felt like they couldn't finish the project or they couldn't do the work. And if I've ever been late on something, if something's happened, I don't disappear, and I didn't know that those kinds of things were going such a long way. Like just telling them, like, "Hey, I messed up this deadline. Here's what happened. Here's how I'm fixing it." Having that conversation, I didn't realize that just doing those things was putting me in such a favorable position, I guess,
Mhm.
because I didn't know at the time how many people were just, yeah, I want to write this book, and then they get a job and then they disappear and the book doesn't get finished and it doesn't come out or something like that. So the biggest thing is doing the work. And again, it is, I guess, not as simple as it sounds. But if this is the job you want, it's a job, and you have to know that you have to do the job.
Yeah, it's not even like, those are like the real extreme cases of somebody who just totally ghosts out on you. But there's ways to ghost out just on your commitments. I mean, how many people that it's like they're constantly moving the goalpost of, I'll have the script Monday, you'll have the script Friday. Friday comes, oh, I'm working on it. I'm almost done. You'll have it Tuesday, and it's like, as the editor, and you're constantly chasing them and constantly hearing this BS, and it's just like, it's exhausting. You just get to the point where you're just like, oh, I can't care about this book more than you care about this book. And clearly you don't care about it. So like at a certain point, like, what are we doing here? And so it's like you said. I mean, I think any decent editor is much, much happier to hear the bad news of, oh, I'm not going to have this for you Friday, but let's talk about, like, what, can I get you part of it? Can I get you some of it? What do you really need? But you'd be shocked at how many people just completely fade all of that stuff, like, and they just don't seem to care. And they get away with it a lot of the time for a long time. In that respect, the bar is actually pretty low, which I've always said that about comic book editors. Like, if people think I'm a great comic book editor, it's like, yeah, well, like, look, who am I running the race against? I mean, so it's like, because
I'm never going to get an editor on this show again.
Well, so I mean, it's just
Thanks,
like,
Will.
no. So but yeah, there is that, just like being professional about it, being communicative and trying to collaborate. It's like a collaboration. It's a highly collaborative medium, so it's
Yeah.
it's communicating with each other, communicating with the editor, with the company, whatever it is. As you said, Stephanie, it's like, it's a job. I mean, it's like, it's fun and it's a cool job, and we're lucky to have it, believe me, but it's still a job. I mean,
part of that is maintaining relationships.
Everything is relationships to me. I mean, I'm constantly berating my children about this. Like, I can teach you how to be a comic book editor. I could probably even help teach you to be a comic book writer, but it's like, you need to build these relationships. Like, you have to have relationships with people, and you have to be able to network with people. You have to be able to find, and it doesn't mean like, oh, you're always on the make, or, this person's going to help me. But, like, no one does it alone. And you need to, because you never know, like, what it is that's going to lead to the next thing. It's like Stephanie saying, like, a lot of these things have happened for her, like, feel very organically, and without her having to, like, go and, be that person with the 20 pitches at the bar saying, oh, listen to my pitch. But you don't know, she doesn't know what happened behind the scenes. She doesn't know, the guy from Mad Cave that was having a drink with Mike Marks and said, oh, I got this really cool comic from this person. But it's like, you have to be in that sort of spider web, like that matrix of opportunity, basically. And it's hard because a lot of people, particularly in this industry, gravitate to this industry. They aren't really built like that, and I've learned that the hard way over the years, in terms of expecting other people's personalities and things to be like mine, in terms of my outgoingness, my connections, trying to make relationships happen for people. I wouldn't say that's the majority of people in this industry, but you have to find a way, I don't know, cosplay that or something, because it's like, that's what's going to really make it what you're going to build a career on, not just like a one-off.
And that's it for part 2 of my talk with Stephanie Phillips and Will Dennis. Once again, a reminder, I'm going to shift gears to heavy metal on the next episode, and then come back around to part 3 of my talk with Stephanie and Will. We will dive deep into what the two of them are doing with Distillery this year. See you soon.